Welcome to Build It for the Web, where we build all things web related step by step so we know how the code behind it works. Today we're going to create a nice loader animation, reminiscent of the Slack logo, the well-known messaging application. What we have on the screen now is going to be the final result. Okay, let's start coding. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is to create a div element with the class loader, and inside that div we're going to place two child elements with the class circle, one element with the class circle1 and the other element with the class circle2. Next we will style our loader class, and since the loader class will be the wrapper element, we're going to put in some CSS variables there that we're going to use across our other child elements. First we're going to set loader length to 100 pixels, which will be the width and the height of our loader class. And then we're going to create a .length class, which is based on the loader length, which will be quite a bit smaller, but this will be the width and the height for our circles in our loader class. We're going to set position relative, we're going to set the width and the height to loader length, and then we're going to style our circle class, and which will be the styling for all of our circle elements. We're going to set position absolute for it. We're going to set a width and a height of .length. And then we're going to set the border radius property as well. We're going to give it a high pixel value so they will all turn to circles. And now we're going to style our circle1 element. We're going to give it a background of a green color with a little bit of transparency. And we're going to place it in the top left corner. And then we're going to style our circle2 class, which will have a background color of a orange color with a little bit of transparency. And we're going to place it in the bottom right corner. And now that we see the two circles on the screen, our next step is going to be to animate them. We're going to make use of CSS variables, so bear with me for a second. We're going to set those up right now. We're going to set up a variable called mid-width and mid-height, and also we're going to set up a variable called translate length, which will be the loader length minus the dot length, and that will be the distance our dot needs to travel to reach the opposite side. And in this case, it will be equal to around 77.5 pixels. And to finish things up, we're going to set two more variables called mid_translate_x and also mid_translate_y. And now we're going to do the circle1 class, and we're going to override some variables so that we can make the circle do what we want inside of the animation. We're going to set the mid-height to the loader length, and we're going to set the mid_translate_y to translate length. Then for our circle2 class, we're going to do basically the same. The only difference really is that we're going to set up the mid_translate_y value differently. We're going to give it a negative value, so we're going to do it -1, and that will make it move upwards instead of downwards. So the next step is going to be to set up the animation itself. We're going to use keyframes for that. We're going to create a keyframes animation, and we're going to call it circle. At the start of the animation, we're going to set our width and height exactly to that of what our circles are right now. And we're going to also set a transform with a translate of 0 and 0. So they're going to stay in their position exactly as they are right now. At the 35% mark, we're going to set the width and the height based on our mid-width and mid-height variables. So depending on how they are overwritten, that will determine how our circles will grow. And for our circles that we have now, we have only set the mid-height property. We've overwritten them differently. So in this case, they will only grow in the vertical axis. At the 70% mark, we're going to unstretch our circles, and we're going to make them return to their original size so that they are circles again. However, we are going to adjust the transform property. We're going to set different translate x and translate y values depending on the CSS variables, how they are overwritten. So in our case, we've only overwritten the mid_translate_y CSS variable, so that will make our circles move either up or down. And then at the 100% mark, we're going to return our circles to their original position, basically the same as what they will be at the 0% mark. Now we're going to set the animation on our circle class. We're going to use the animation property for that. We're going to make it last 5 seconds, and we're going to set the infinite keyword so that the animation will play infinitely. Our next step is to set up the other two circle elements and to animate them also. So let's create two more div elements also with the class circle, and then set the class circle 3 and circle 4 on them. Let's create the circle 3 and circle 4 classes. And now instead of overwriting the mid height and mid translate y variables, we're going to overwrite the mid width and mid translate x variables. And overwriting those variables will help us to move our circles that we're going to place on the horizontal axis instead of the vertical axis. To create the animation that we are looking for, we need to offset the circles so that when they are moving to the opposite direction, that they will cross each other. And we're going to use a CSS variable for that. We're going to call it .offset, and it will be a fraction of what the loader length is. For the circle 1 class, we're going to adjust the left property. We're going to set the .offset value there. And for the circle 2 class, we're going to set it on the right property. And then for our circle 3 class, we're going to set it on the top property. And then for our circle 4 class, we're going to set it on the bottom property. And now let's play the animation again and see how that looks. That is much more similar to the final goal that we have. We only need to do a couple of finishing touches to make it look really good. We're going to set the transform property on our loader class, and we're going to rotate it by -15 degrees. The final step that we have is to set different z-index values on our individual circle elements so that they will overlap properly. And now this is what the final result looks like. We can play around with the CSS variables a bit to see what kind of impact that will have. We can decrease the amount of pixels of our loader length variable to decrease the size of the final animation. We can increase it to make it a lot bigger. We can make the dots bigger and smaller. And we can also play with the amount of distance there is between the dots. Let's set our animation back to its original size. And that will be it for this video. The inspiration for this code can be found on uiverse.io, and the link to the original code can be found in the description. If there are any other animations or web components you want me to explain, let me know in the comments. I'll be making many more of these kinds of videos. Until next time, bye bye!